Good morning and welcome back to day 2 of the Board of Regents meeting here at University of Montana Western. I hope everyone had a great opportunity to tour the museum yesterday and to dine in Dillon. We appreciate certainly the hospitality of the town and for the community members that joined us this morning for breakfast to talk about the great partnerships that we have and the growing partnerships that we have between MUS and the University of Montana Western and this community. So thank you, Chancellor Reed, for inviting folks from your community to be able to have that dialogue with the Board of Regents. We've got just a few items to cover today. We will go through our 2-year and community college committee. We have several information items that we look forward to discuss, and then we'll take some action. So before we dive into our first committee, I want to turn it over to Superintendent of Public Instruction, Elsie Arntzen. Elsie, thank you for traveling down to Dillon yet again, joining us at a Board of Regents meeting. So Elsie, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair Lozar, Commissioner, and Regents, and everyone else that's here. It's a great opportunity to be here. Thank you for your patience for allowing me to come today and not yesterday. Yesterday we had a Board of Public Ed meeting, and a lot of things were on that docket as well. So, but it's good to be here. I am very hopeful that you received in your packet the information, so I don't need to reiterate exactly what we have, but I want to highlight some of the great things in our partnership. First off, I want to say that we are going to be, the next meeting is going to be up at Northern, correct? Yes, and we are going to be working, our office is going to be working with legislators as well as the Chancellor to ensure that our #1 industry, that is agriculture, is really spotlighted. And of course, in my world in education, making sure that that message gets out in many, many ways in a partnership. And one of the things that I want to offer to all of the components of the university system is that from my 12 years of being a legislator, sometimes it's good to educate them too, even in the interim. So we have a pathway that I can offer that goes out to the 150 plus some other entities that are in that political world that would highlight education. So if you would like to get onto our website and my number's accessible, if you would like to share with me what is going on in your campus and what you're currently doing or what your history may have been or where you want to go, I would be more than happy to market that for you throughout this newsletter that I have. It's called The Navigator, and we are, yikes, we're about 10 months away from a new legislative body being sat. And there will be a lot of new ones, even though there seems to be movement from the House to the Senate. But I would be more than happy to put a partnership if you have something that you would like to share to educate those policymakers. We are also doing that even though the primary will happen in June. So it will be even those that are knocking on those doors to be able to share the goodness that is happening in education in a P20 look. So I would like to offer that. The other thing is, let's talk about our partnership. We've talked a little bit in the past about assessments. We do have a partnership with the ACT at this point. Let's look a little bit further down the road. We're in our 6th year of a federally mandated test, and we have a partnership with the ACT. Let's see if that is what is needed within our partnership of move from secondary to post-secondary and even beyond those students that go outside of Montana. But let's look broader to see the purpose of what that assessment is. We are going to be opening the door with the U.S. Department of Education in a very formal manner of innovation, but we're also doing one on the side, and they are going to be parallel moving forward. We should have a new statewide assessment system by 24, and that's only 2 years away. So if you have any ideas or anything that we could do, Commissioner, moving forward, I think we need to set a meeting. And that meeting, not that it's death by meetings as we all have so many on our docket, but that ACT discussion needs to occur. The other part is I've been talking about teachers a lot in the media, and I've been very, very blessed that I was a 23-year veteran. Gotta love those 10 and 11-year-old 5th and 6th graders. For 23 years, honorable to serve where I legislated as also where I taught. Teachers. I do know that I have initially licensed just last year with the data about 1,600 initial licenses. 40% of those were from out of state. That means we need to grow our own a little bit more that we could. We need that pipeline from your teacher prep programs to be very robust coming in to be licensed, and not everybody should have that diploma, that comes. That's where you come into play, and not everyone should have that license that has our great seal of Montana on it. So we want the best. I have asked the Board of Public Ed, I did this in September of 20, to open up their rules in teacher licensing. We brought a lot of research together, and then we brought committees together, and right now they are in front of the Board of Public Ed for public comment. Please get on the Board of Public Ed's website, look to see what those recommendations are, see if they fit, see how they might be better. That public comment, we're a very bright sunshine state. Please offer your voice within how that might look. We need teachers, and we need to grow our own teachers. A couple opportunities. We have had 3 virtual fairs, and the last one was 2 weeks ago. We had 35 schools that looked at this, and we had 180 applicants. We opened it up internationally as well as to nationally and to our Montana homegrown. That's a dialogue to partner an employer and an employee together. And those are Montana licensed teachers. So we want to make sure that we continue that dialogue. The other part, and this is a partnership, teacher residency. A teacher residency came from a very interesting seed to say, what if we paid student teachers? What if we paid them for that experience, but they also gave back to that community? Rather than in a short time frame, we had them in the system in that community for a year. Paid residency, also for that mentor teacher, to grow a pipeline of a great cadre of teachers to be able to lead. Not just that student teacher or that resident teacher. So we are looking right now to use some of our very precious COVID dollars to begin this. We've had a lot of discussions with the University of Montana. We've had a lot of discussions here with the Dean of Education here in seeing how we can put a pair, 2 teachers in a school system for a year, pay them, and right now we're looking at $14,000 for them to have their experience being paid, as well as paying a mentor teacher about $5,000 for that year experience. And then we may come to you and ask for a partnership in what does that look like for their credit redemption. And I know it's budget, and I just want to put that seed in your ear at this time. I have about 20 rural tribal schools that are looking at this point, that are excited. We have legislators that are excited. I can do this without legislation, but for the sustainability of it, I will need a longer and stronger partnership moving forward to the 23 session, which is only 10 months away. So we have a great steering committee, and I can give you more information on where that is going. I want to end on mental health. And I know we need to be mindful of who we are as adults first. I'm very pleased that our governor is looking at financially supporting, putting a tool for teachers and communities and school leaders in looking to see who needs the services for mental health and what services there might need to be. I am asking the governor to put together a steering committee. We need to have your support on that. I believe we're all working in this realm, but let's put our good work together, and we all know one size does not fit all. But if we put our good voices together, we can come up with some sort of an opportunity that may fit a community. Our K-12 system feeds to you. If we have healthy young individuals that then become healthy young adults and come to you, then they have a healthy path for completion. So we need to work on this together. I have some very passionate individuals in the agency, as well as what we've been working with outside. K-12 is not the panacea for mental health, nor is it the panacea for workforce development, but we need to work together. So there are a lot of things that I could touch on, and I know your time is precious. I hope you have received our information. We are working very diligently. I love my job. I have 3 more years left in my service to the state in this role, and I am willing to do as much as I possibly can to have public school, to have our partnership be strong, and to honor our teachers wherever they might be. With that, Chair Lozar, if there's anything you might ask of me, or if I can clarify, I would be happy to stand for questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent. Any questions for the Superintendent? Yeah, I was just going to sort of add, mental health has been a kind of a theme of this meeting, and certainly we had a great set of presentations yesterday from OCHI and from WICHI on some of the mental health activities that are happening in the system. So I certainly see OCHI as a resource, and the task force in the university system as a resource. Both Brock and Christine Miller will be incredible advocates for you as you're kind of pulling together the steering committee. It's something that we hold as a top priority here in the university system. So I'm glad you raised that really important point.
Thank you, Chair. And we have a new kid on the block as well, and want to welcome Mr. Southworth as well, and into my world. So, you know, there's a lot of things that we can educate you on to aid you in your service here to the board. And I'd be more than willing, you know, to offer that myself personally, but there are many individuals behind me that can also do that. So welcome.
Thank you. All right, well, let's transition to our last committee meeting for the day. And for this meeting, I'm going to turn it over to Regent Sexton to chair our 2-year in Community College Committee with the assistance of Deputy Commissioner Brock Tessman.
Thank you, Chair Lozar, and thank you for the opportunity to be able to chair this committee. The 2-year committee has been very close to my heart since I started on the board, and I was very appreciative that the committee let me crash their pre-board meeting without complaint, so thank you for that. Yeah, we had a fantastic planning meeting and some really great conversation that we're looking forward to share with you, so I will turn it over to Deputy Commissioner Tessman to start off our presentations.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. Certainly, it's been fun for me to work with you in preparation for this meeting, and I think we'll have another one after it, and really excited to have you serving as chair of this committee. We've got 3 items for you today, and you know, typically we'll have an explicit item on workforce training, workforce development, economic development as part of the 2-year committee. We don't have that today, but all of this does support not only our focus on student success, you'll hear a little bit about that in the developmental education update, but it supports accelerated pathways to credentialing and degree work through the prior learning assessment policy revision that we're getting underway. I think it emphasizes our commitment to flexible education, and it also does tie really directly into our workforce development efforts. I have to say, yesterday during the research presentation, we were wrapping up the day, but research in the Montana University system is all about economic development. And it strikes me that if we thought about the numbers we heard yesterday from Director Teal and Vice Presidents Carter and Wittenberg and professors from UM Western, we've got about a $325 million investment coming into the state of Montana that's spread throughout the state. It creates jobs, it creates new technologies, new businesses. It's really worth connecting those pieces together. Director Teal didn't have a chance to mention it, but we will be launching this year Montana Innovation Alliance, connecting leaders from private industry, state agencies. Certainly Commissioner Christian will be deeply involved. The whole point, connecting all this other work we do in the system to innovation, job creation, economic development. So you can look forward as a board to hearing updates from that group as we move ahead. Another update, I want to not miss an opportunity to recognize Jenny Harms, who is here from Accelerate Montana. Jenny directs a lot of the Accelerate Montana programs. Most notably, she is directing efforts around a $6 million ARPA project, a rapid training ARPA project that was allocated to Accelerate Montana to really promote training education in areas of great need for the state of Montana in connection with private industry partners. So working directly with businesses and industries across the state to invest those ARPA dollars, get individuals trained up, skilled up, retrained, or trained for the first time so that they can help their businesses that they work for, help their communities, and of course, make the next steps in their own career trajectory. The reason I bring Jenny up right now is that she and the team, Paul Gladen at Accelerate Montana, I think have followed President Bodner's charge and have really connected themselves to the rest of our two-year system. And we have, if you haven't noticed, a great set of two-year leaders right here next to us, and I think many of them have had productive conversations with Jenny and her team. Those dollars are moving quickly. There is absolutely no way we can move fast enough, but I think Accelerate Montana is the right organization to be moving it forward in collaboration with our two-year campuses. So there'll be exciting updates, I think, to share on that front in May and then September after that. Certainly the two-year leaders, hopefully you can connect with Jenny before you leave today. I'll bring to the podium, if it's all right, Madam Chair, Jackie Treaster, who is our statewide CTE director. She heads up many of our workforce initiatives and also has really taken the reins of a prior learning assessment working group. She has an update to provide. We do that every March. And she also has, as an information item, a policy revision that would make prior learning assessment much more flexible and allow us to be much more aggressive in the way that we award credit for prior work experience, military experience. All of this is part of our ability to be flexible and meet workforce demand and serve students more effectively. Jackie, really appreciate you leading these two items. Take them in any order you like. I think the updates first. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. Happy to be here to give you a prior learning assessment update. And so this is actually a part of our current policy and will continue in our revision of our policy that you all will get an annual report for prior learning assessment. And so we typically do that in March. And so hopefully you'll continue to see me and continue to make some progress here. So we can go ahead to the first slide, but I want to give a little bit of background just with what exactly PLA is as you're looking at this information. So prior learning assessment is a way for us to value learning that happens outside of that traditional academic setting for our students. And so there are really three ways to do that. The first is through either standardized exams or exams that are created by college faculty. The second way is to do a portfolio review or some other kind of individualized review for a student to see what their prior learning is. And the third way would be an evaluation of non-college or non-credit experience that a student may have that can translate to it in the for-credit space. So there's really three different ways that we do that. You will see that the vast majority of the credits that we have in prior learning assessment in Montana is through advanced placement and international baccalaureate. And you'll see that these other areas, you know, a lot of our military students, some of these other standardized tests, we're not seeing as large of numbers. And so this shows us that we have some room to grow, and I think that we have some progress to make here. And as we'll talk about, you know, through the end of this presentation and with our policy revision, I think we have some great plans where we could make some progress in those areas and make a few changes where we can serve some different students. So on the next slide, so just a little bit more about some of the PLA demographics. You can see it's pretty split down the middle, female, male, predominantly white. That's not a surprise, but we are seeing quite a large number of students that are younger than, or that are 24 or younger. So again, shows that a lot, no surprise where that vast majority of our credits are AP, IB. Only 6% of our PLA credits are coming in from veteran students. So again, just shows where we can make some improvements in that area. On the next slide, so these are our non-AP IB demographics. So again, looking at some of those other ways that we're awarding PLA credit. A little bit of a majority male, again, majority white, no surprise there, but we're still seeing quite a few young students. So, but we are seeing a lot more percentage, about a third are coming in from veteran students. And so it really just shows me that I think that we could do a little bit more for our adult student population here. Next slide. And so this is just another way to look at the data, all PLA versus AP IB credit and then non-AP IB credit, just broken down into our demographics. I don't need to go through all of this. It's just another way to look at the data. Next slide. And then this is another little breakdown for you, what the PLA looks like in the MUS. So 21% of enrolled students have PLA credit. That's actually a pretty good number. 9% of enrolled students that are 25 or older have PLA credits. That's where I think that we have a lot of room to grow as serving our adult students. And then 32% of enrolled veterans have PLA credits. Again, I don't know the national number. To me, that at least seems a little bit low. I think that our veteran students should be able to enter the MUS with a little bit more credit than what we're seeing there. And then this is a slide that Dan Corrales put together before he moved on to another opportunity. We're looking a lot at data that is showing us opportunity gaps, and we're looking at CTE and dual enrollment, and so we decided to look at PLA this way as well. And so we are seeing that younger students, 24 and under, are overrepresented, and we're seeing that American Indian students are underrepresented. And so, just another way to look at the data and try to get us thinking a little bit more about what policies and practices we can implement to make sure that we're serving everyone as equally as possible. And I think that is my last slide. So we do have a PLA webpage that you can go to, and we do have some resources on there. I think we talked a little bit yesterday when Scott was here that we would love to integrate a lot of this information onto the portal. There's an opportunity there to get that information a lot more accessible. One thing we talk about in our office is that the reason that AP and IB credits are so popular is because there's a culture around it. Students know what it is. It's easily accessible. People talk about it. They know how to get it. And so we'd like to make sure that we're trying to have that same culture with some of our other PLA credits. So military students should know that this opportunity is available. Adult students who have, skills that they've learned that may translate into 4 credit should know that this is an available opportunity for them as well. And so, there are ways to, I think the portal is a great way to get that information out. And then I think we can go ahead and talk about the policy. And then as we talk about the new policy a little bit, I'd like to talk about some of the next steps that OSHI is going to be taking, so we can improve those numbers, and like I said, hopefully next March I'll be able to give you a little bit more of an idea of where our progress is happening. So you will see there are 2 attachments. The first is a policy revision that is redlined, so you'll kind of see where we're making some changes. And the second attachment is a clean copy version of the policy. Our 2-year leadership has had a chance to review it, and we have been working with our 2-year leaders on this change, and so they've been amazing partners for us. And really the big changes that you're going to see is the first is that we're removing the 25% PLA credit cap that existed with NWCCU policy. Our current policy aligned with that NWCCU policy. They ended up removing their 25% cap, and so this new policy aligns with that practice. The second big change that you'll see is in the current policy, there was reference to a PLA council. And that was a pretty large council with about 30 people. It was hard to maintain, hard to schedule, and we saw a lot of turnover where we were losing a lot of institutional knowledge of folks that were on that council and were representing their campus. And so now we're moving in a direction where we have a little bit smaller group who's working on some of the specifics, but we are hoping to spend some time and money on some professional development, where we'll be getting this information out to a lot more people on the campuses, so that when we have someone turnover who might be, you know, the PLA expert on a campus, we're not going to lose all of that institutional knowledge. There will hopefully be plenty more people on the campus that can help students navigate PLA. So those are the two major changes. This also sets us up for a few other things that I think we'd like to do at OCHI. You know, one is we'd really like to streamline the process. We'd like to have some kind of toolkit that we can share with campuses and faculty. You know, there may be faculty who don't know how to write an exam for a student, you know, to test the knowledge that may result in credit. And so we can help them do that. You know, we'd like to have an idea of what programs are implementing a cap. And so this does give the freedom for campuses and programs to implement caps depending on what makes sense for their program. Obviously, in a lot of health professions with accreditation standards, time in the seat is really important, and so we don't want to ever risk anything like that. But in some other areas, it might make sense for a student who has maybe several industry recognized credentials to get a certain number of PLA credit for a program. We'd also like to figure out how to track our data better. I would love to be able to figure out what exactly, you know, what PLA credit is coming into the system, where those students are ending up, are they graduating with a degree that's related to their prior learning assessment, and are they employed after, you know, earning their degree. I think that we'd really love to be able to track that. And the other thing that we would really like to do is figure out how to streamline the way that the process is as far as fees go for our campuses. If you look at all of our different campuses, fees are pretty all over the place depending on if it's an exam or a portfolio review. We'd like to be able to figure out how to streamline that as much as possible so that there is some kind of consistency that will also help us with our messaging as well. So with that was a pretty quick overview. Sorry if I was talking really quick, but happy to stand for any questions.
Thank you, Director Treaster, and it was an excellent presentation. You did great. Are there any questions from the Regents? All right, no questions. Yeah, I thought we had a really good discussion about this on our call, but I would like to make sure that we ensure that there's transferability and standardization with the credits that are earned. So if a student gets PLA at one institution, that those would transfer just like any other credits to other institutions. So I think that we talked a bit about that.
Yeah, Madam Chair, and thanks for that overview. There's a lot of work that's gone on behind the scenes. And Jackie, certainly you're right to thank Dan Corrales for putting some of the slides together, but the reality is, you know, I think you have you stepped up, you've taken leadership of this. I know there's been a lot of leaning on the campuses and the working group. You know, like others throughout the system, we're, you know, seeing shifting responsibilities, and I think you have steered this in a really appropriate way. It'll come back in May. Certainly, Jackie and I welcome, you know, additional thoughts as board members have them. I think this does provide a solid foundation for PLA. It still gives each campus and each program flexibility so that we can have caps where appropriate, maybe fewer limits in other areas on the fee side. This is all about, through the portal or otherwise, taking PLA from something that maybe at one point in time was just about kind of an ad hoc advising conversation that may or may not happen, to where I think it is today, which is a good part of our student success strategy, to where we want it to be, which is actually part of our recruitment and outreach strategy. If someone logs onto the portal or they talk to someone as an initial point of contact in the MUS, they should have a pretty darn good grasp of how far along they might be already towards degree, because we know that's going to affect their decision whether to enroll or not in the first place. So this is all really stellar stuff, and I want to thank you explicitly for what you've done to push it forward. And Chair Sexton, I mean, certainly happy to move on to the other item, or if there are follow-up questions from you or the board, I think we can tackle them.
Thank you, Deputy Commissioner Tessman. Are there any other follow-up questions from the board? Okay. I just want to say too that, I mean, I was a PLA guinea pig at my institution, so you've come a really long way. This is fantastic, and I've actually just been talking with a lot of people I work with who don't have degrees and kind of explain to them, hey, you know, you might be able to get an associate or a certificate from one of Great Falls College's programs in, you know, business and administration and those types of things. So I think this is an enormous step in that direction, so you really should be proud. So, and yes, we can move on to the next item. Thank you.
Well, thanks, Madam Chair. And the next item, developmental education. I mean, it's a huge topic. It's actually an area where I think the MUS stands out. A number of years ago, I know Commissioner Christian led an effort to move much more towards something called Corequisite design, kind of a new strategy in this area. But today you're going to hear from three absolute experts, one from our system office. You all know Director Christine Miller. Some of you may not know Sierra Franks Ongoy, who's joined our team, and Lauren Fern from the University of Montana. I'll let Christine do more extended introductions. But keep in mind as she's talking, every single year we're looking at a quarter to a third of our students in the system who work their way through some kind of developmental education. So if we think about student success and completion and retention, this has got to be at the center of the discussion. And so really excited for the panel you put together today, Christine. Thank you.
Thanks, Brock. Chair Sexton, Regents, members of the committee. Yeah, we're going to talk about developmental education today, and I know that our system and all of you have heard quite a bit about this. It's been a little quiet on the agenda front, but there's been a lot of work going on over the past few years and kind of consistently since this board has heard about this on the agenda. Regent Bao had a really good question on our committee call about, okay, so yes, this is important, but why are we hearing about this? Why is this kind of raising to the level of board concern? And I, really appreciate the question. And so I want to take a little bit of time in framing some of what our panelists are going to talk about today about exactly why this is kind of a board and system level effort, and most importantly, why we need to pay attention to this right now. Part of the importance of this is that our campuses have been doing a lot. Independent faculty, math and English departments across the system have been doing a lot. And there's some really good percolating activity going on. And at the same time, there are some very important and kind of key, unique system level activities that we need to do that can only happen at the system level to kind of level up our efforts in this and make sure that we're serving students with developmental education needs well and that they're being successful. So, this slide says developmental education is student success. It could also say developmental education is about enrollment. Developmental education is about access. Developmental education is about two-year education. It's about workforce development. Students who are identified as having a developmental education need make up, as Brock mentioned, between every single year, 1/4 and 1/3 of our entire two-year student population. So if we think about workforce development, students completing their degrees, if we think about underserved populations, this is the thing that we can do, and thankfully we have a pretty good solution to this challenge, but it impacts all of the other strategic priorities that we have set out as a system that we're trying to address. So when we think about enrollment, yes, part of enrollment is access. Part of enrollment is also keeping our students enrolled and in school, those that are already there. And this is kind of the very first checkpoint that students have in their path. So the consequences of getting this right or getting this wrong are very significant. If we get it right, it means that those 1 in 4 or 1 in 3 students have a much, much higher likelihood of staying in school, of graduating, of doing so sooner, of saving money. If we get it wrong, it means the opposite of that. less than nationally, a little less than 10% of students who are enrolled in traditional remediation courses, so kind of the old model of doing this, less than 1 in 10 eventually complete their degree. So right now, as I said, this is an ongoing issue. This is not new to anybody. I'm looking at Provost Makwa. You led some efforts on math pathways related to this several years ago. We've been at work on this. There is some urgency right now. So this chart shows ACT scores for Montana high school juniors over time. So it's a little bit hard to see up there in the bright light, but if you look for math and English both, the 2020 to 2021 school year, you'll see a pretty significant drop in proficiency in math and English. Yesterday, President Cruzado talked about just how hard the pandemic has hit education. And I think that we see this in our institutions, we see this in math and English proficiency, and certainly, I'm looking at you, Superintendent, certainly our high schools and K-12 sector has been doing so much to address this issue. What we need to do on the post-secondary level is understand that we have students who are going to be coming to us with significantly less proficiency, and we need to be ready for them. And we need to make adjustments on the system and institutional level to be able to serve students in this way. By the way, if you break this out by class AA, A, B, C high schools, you'll see that our students from Class B and Class C schools, so our most rural students, there are even greater gaps. If you break this out by American Indian and white students, you'll see that the gaps between American Indian and white students has been exacerbated even more because of the pandemic. So not only are we talking about access and enrollment and student success and completion, but we're also talking about equity and our American Indian populations and our rural populations and our low-income populations. So, as I said, I am pointing these things out because I think it's important that as we move forward and as we ask you, our board, to make decisions in the coming year about developmental education, around policy, around changing our metrics, around how we help our faculty and have some system-wide sharing of best practices, it's important that we all understand the context and why this is such an important issue. So, to that point, I have with me here today Professor Lauren Fern from Missoula College, who is the math discipline lead there and was one of our MUS teaching scholars and is just an all-around outstanding faculty member. She's going to talk with you a little bit about what the approach is, what we're trying to move our system to, and why that's important. I also have Sierra Franks-Ongoy here with me today, who's our office's Perkins Equitable Access Coordinator, who's going to zoom out a little bit and then talk about, so if we take these two different approaches, why is one so much better and who is it better for? And Sierra is going to wrap us up with talking a little bit about the work that our steering committee that's actively working on this, what they're up to and what we can see going forward. Before I turn it over to Lauren, I am going to just make a quick note about Professor Fern's work. She's not only a math faculty member, but we're very lucky in the Montana University system to have Lauren. She is a consultant for the Dana Center at UT Austin, and that's kind of the locus of the best developmental education work happening in the country. She consults with other systems and states and institutions, and we're very lucky to be able to have her here and to draw on her expertise. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to you, Lauren.
Thank you, Christine, and thank you to the board for having me here. I just want to say momentarily, it is the case that I work with university systems around the country, and I've done a lot of consulting work with various 2-year and 4-year institutions to help implement these initiatives using best practices. But nothing makes me happier than to actually be able to be here in Montana at home and to talk to all of you. So my heart is full with this. I just need to say that. As Christine said, it is vitally important to meet students where they're at, and we need to be ready for the students that are coming to us. What I would like to do here in the next few minutes is just provide some brief history and context to explain the differences between these two models. And why the quote-unquote new model or the co-requisite model is really the most beneficial for our students. So historically, in order for students to obtain a degree in higher ed, all the students were funneled into college algebra. And that was the gateway math course. Beautiful mathematics, but as we know, it's not relevant for a lot of the students who are going into non-STEM fields. And many students who come to college are actually quite underprepared for the college algebra course. Thus, the developmental education sequence. The developmental education approach was essentially designed to take those underprepared students, and they were built specifically to prepare students for college algebra. That was where all the curriculum came from, and those developmental education courses consist of either 1, 2, or 3. So what this really means is that students would come to college, and they would have to take perhaps up to 3 semesters or more before they get to their first college level math class. And by doing that, we're setting students back. It costs them time, it costs them money, and it really gives a lot of exit points. I mean, we all know that math tends to be a huge hurdle for students, and when students get stuck in those, you know, they'll leave, okay? So the problem with the developmental education as it stands is it's just a super long sequence, and it's really all geared to prepare students for college algebra. Well, in 2015, the MUS put forth a task force to go to what we call our math pathways, which are really beautifully aligned with the guided pathways that the 2-year systems use. And the nice thing about these math pathways is students would then take a rigorous math course, but one that was geared and relevant for what the students are interested in studying and where they're headed. Excuse me 1 second, sorry. So in general, at this point, best practices say that there's 3 pathways. We have the, for the social sciences and business students, we have our statistics pathway. And for the humanities students, we have a quantitative literacy pathway. The quantitative literacy pathway is definitely a rigorous math course, and I think it's really important. I think we all talk about how important literacy is, but quantitative literacy, especially in the world that we're heading into, it's vital in order to be an effective and engaged citizen. So we have these 3 different pathways, which really provide relevant experiences for students, and we all know that when students feel like the material that they're learning is relevant to their interests, to their community, and to their future goals, they're going to be more vested in it. So math pathways are awesome, but it still didn't get to the issue with the developmental education. Because what do we do with all of the students who enter into our system who will go the statistics route or the quantitative literacy route? Of course, we still have the college algebra for the STEM students. But what do we do with those who aren't yet prepared? And as Christine's slide showed, that's a huge number of students. Well, we have those developmental education courses, but all of that content was initially built in order to funnel students into the college algebra. Lovely math, but not really relevant for the courses that they were going to take. And simultaneously, they also don't necessarily cover certain material that would be really beneficial for the students who are going to be studying statistics. So, and most importantly, in order to be prepared for the statistics and the quantitative reasoning, for the majority of students, it doesn't take an entire semester of prerequisite material. So what makes sense? Well, that's where our new approach came in. And this new approach is called the Corequisite Model. And in a nutshell, what the Corequisite Model does is it takes students who are identified as underprepared and we place them directly into the college level math course. But we provide a ton of extra support. So what is the support that we provide? Well, we provide all of the prereq material needed, but we teach that just in time. So unlike in the developmental education courses where students learn all sorts of cool skills and then don't use them for 2 years, assuming they even remember them, these students are learning these skills and then immediately applying them in the college level content. So the relevance is there, and then the understanding is deeper. So we provide extra support in the prereq content. Again, that's just in time. Another beautiful thing that we do in that is we really create a strong community. When students feel like they belong, they're going to be more vested. And we focus on all of those other affective issues. As we know, confidence, self-efficacy, study skills, learning how to learn math is a whole different ballgame. So we really, really try to help these students develop goals, develop their study skills and critical thinking skills, so they're not just ready for their next math course, but so that they're ready to really tackle their whole college education and moving forward. By using this Corequisite model, we've effectively eliminated all of the exit points. It's a one and done, and we've reduced the students' cost and time to degree. We help foster that growth mindset, and we really focus on having the students complete their first college gateway math course and writing course in their first year. And this helps us retain students and helps them persist and graduate. I just want to add one thing. I've been doing these courses at the University of Montana since 2017, and the results are stunning. I collect data every semester. I want to add that in these Corequisite courses, they are not at all watered down. The students are given the exact same assessments that the students in the quote-unquote regular courses are given. And to see these students who think that they can't do math and actually succeed in that semester, I mean, that's what gets me up every morning. And I really want to just emphasize the difference that this approach makes for these students. So, last but not least, I just want to add that all of these different initiatives have a synergistic effect between the math pathways, which are so crucial, the Corequisite model, and then holistic placement. And all students go through some form of math placement across the system. Our different institutions have different placement methods, but they're designed to fit what's best for their students. But one of the goals of our steering committee that I'm helping chair is to have these broad discussions to use best practices and bring some alignment across the system. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Lauren. And I think that it's so helpful to have a little bit of context about what the different thing is happening for students in these two different models. Sierra is going to zoom out a little bit and talk more about kind of on a system level what that means for our overall student population and who these students are, and a little bit about the work of our steering committee.
Sure, yeah, so I'm gonna be pretty brief, but I'm gonna give that zoomed out system view. There we go. So Lauren really dived into the math perspective in developmental education, but it's worth noting that it's developmental education is often thought of in terms of math and writing gateway courses. And so when we consider these different models of developmental education, whether that's the kind of traditional prerequisite remedial model versus the more newer co-requisite model, it's worth noting that there's different outcomes for these different courses. And the things that we're looking at the system level, or would like to look at the system level, is how many students in these different models go on to complete their gateway math or writing course, and then how long it takes them to get to those gateway courses in terms of either time or credit load, and then beyond the gateway course if they persist to their degree. So I'll say that currently right now we're not able to get at that level of nuance in the MUS. We are able to look at the sum of the population enrolled in any sort of developmental education, but we're not able to disaggregate by students who are in the co-rec versus the traditional remedial model, since both happen. And then we're not able to follow that student success through their programming to their degree. That's where we would like to go, and we're currently working on getting that data infrastructure in place. The issue right now really is just getting the coding all on the same page for courses across campuses, and so we are working on getting that all on the same page. What we do know nationally when we look at the data that has been done in different states is that overwhelmingly the co-requisite model yields more gateway course completions and does so in a faster amount of time, and then ultimately leads to more persistence to a degree. A couple weeks ago at the two-year committee call, Regent Dombrowski and Regent Rogers asked about the economic cost for students who enroll in a co-requisite sort of model versus the traditional developmental education model. And while we don't have numbers on that for the same reasons that we can't really look at the current outcomes for students in those two different pathways, I think it's pretty logical to look at this very simplified model of these two different pathways through developmental education, and recognize that like students who are in these remedial courses before they get to their gateway course are paying for courses that they're not necessarily receiving a credit for until they get to that gateway course, and they might be taking several of them, and they might not be enrolling in the next one, and that just kind of builds up into this accumulated cost, whereas in the co-requisite model, it's pretty much one and done, like Lauren said. They're getting that co-requisite support just in time, and they're completing that gateway course and moving on to whatever courses that are unlocked by completing that gateway course. So they're not being held up. What we can look at when we look at the MUS data, like I said, is the sum of the population of students who are enrolled in any sort of developmental education. Like Christine said, for two-year students kind of broadly, it's anywhere from 1/4 to 1/3 of students are enrolled in developmental education. We do see among other populations of students that number, that their representation is even greater. So in particular, Pell recipient students are disproportionately overrepresented in developmental education. We also see a slight increase for American Indian students and for our rural students. And developmental education is intended to be a tool and a resource for these students and meeting them where they're at when they arrive at our campuses. And so it's really important, to reiterate Christine's point at the top, to really make sure that we're understanding the different impacts of these different models on our students, and making sure that we're instilling best practices in how we're serving these students through developmental education. So I will wrap this up by providing kind of the 3 takeaways that we hope you get out of this information item. First is that developmental education is like a pretty key part of the two-year experience. I think that's evident in just the number of students who are enrolled in developmental education and how key it is to access and meeting students where they're at when they arrive to our campuses. In addition to that, the two different models have different impacts or different outcomes for students. We see that nationally. I suspect we'll see that when we look at the MUS data once we're able to do so. And that ties to pretty much all of our strategic priorities when we think about access and affordability, when we think about efficiency in programming and making it to a degree and entering in the workforce. Finally, we would like to find better alignment of tools to support developmental education across the system. So things like policy, things like data and metrics, things like best practices in professional development for faculty and advisors who are connected to developmental education. The steering committee is currently working down the path on getting those tools in place, starting with the data piece so we can really understand what's happening. Yeah, it's really important work. I think making sure as a system we're all on the same page in a community of practice around developmental education is a priority. So with that, I think we'll wrap up and we'll stand for questions.
Thank you, Director Miller, Professor Fern, Sarah, for that excellent presentation on this clearly critically important topic. Are there any questions from the Regents? Regent Bao.
Sure. Chair Sexton, Director Miller. Are we offering the co-requisite model across the system at all the locations?
Yeah, Chair Sexton, Regent Bao. Yes, so all of our two-year institutions offer co-requisite courses. I think the thing that we would like to see, when our system first started implementing these, we were kind of a national leader, and so there were a lot of questions about which model of co-requisite courses is going to be the best given whatever the student population, the campus context, et cetera. And so there was some really great kind of grassroots, like guerrilla co-requisite implementation. Because of that, we have a lot of different models across the system. A few years on, I think our institutions have learned a lot about what works and what doesn't, and that's part of the work and why we're revisiting this, is to look at all of those institutions who do have co-requisite courses and co-requisite models and figure out what's best, what's working for the most students, and how can we build some policy, data, et cetera, infrastructure to support those best practices on all of our campuses.
Sure, thank you. And follow-up question, Director Miller. So, and Lauren, thank you for your presentation. It was, you can tell how heartfelt you are about this. And I think it's a particular issue in Montana, and there's so much variability, especially among the small schools, about the level of math in particular and what level the students come into the programs with. And COVID has just amplified the issue. Can we get a sense of how many students, some data around how many students are being impacted and kind of pre-co-requisite, post-co-requisite in terms of success? I mean, we might not be at this meeting, but I mean, it's always good to see some data around this. I think Lauren's going to answer before you are. I can see her, she's ready to.
Chair Sexton, Regent Bao. Yeah, so that's our goal. Right now we have campus level data about what's happening at different institutions. We do not currently have, though we are actively putting in place better tracking so that at the system level we can track co-requisite courses and be able to report on outcomes for co-requisite courses and remedial courses. This kind of connects to some of Tyler's discussion yesterday about the performance funding metric around remedial education. Right now, that metric measures the method of developmental education delivery. So it measures how many students are in this old model, and of those students who goes on to complete the Gateway Math and English course. What we would like to do is kind of step back from that, be able to measure the outcome. Tyler talked about measuring what we value, and I think we collectively value the outcome rather than the method of delivery. We want to be able to measure that outcome. Who is completing a Gateway Math and English course of our whole student population? And then we can drill down also into who's getting that through a co-requisite course, of those students in co-requisites versus traditional remediation, do we have any concerns around which students are being kind of funneled into these different directions? Can we correct that through our different advising practices? Can we provide some professional development and scaffolding around that?
I just think from the, thank you, Director Millen. I just think from the broader Regents perspective, and to your point about why we're discussing this, and I now understand, that it fits very much in with, when you look at the programs that we've implemented at this level, whether Tillman Scholars or Montana 10, it's about providing that extra very focused resource and identifying the students who need it and then providing the resource quickly before they fall off the path. So I think that's, that's really important work that you're doing, and I compliment you on it. Thank you.
Thank you. And really, thanks to Lauren and Sierra, too.
Thank you, Regent Bao. Any other questions from the Regents? Oh, yes, President Bonner.
Well, Madam Chair and Regents, I am so glad you got a chance to have this presentation. I just want to make kind of 2 points. And one is, you don't have the privilege of seeing the real live human beings that often who are in the classroom having such an impact on our students. And I mean, you can see, and thank you, Regent Bao, you can see Professor Fern's passion come through, having visited her class in person. And then during the pandemic, you just see so tangibly the care, and I would even use the word love, that our faculty have for our students and their deep commitment. I will tell you, in 2020, as I joined Lauren's class, she asked me to join the chat, and this was a Zoom class. As we went to Zoom in those meetings, the chat explodes with comments of how Professor Fern is the reason I'm still at the University of Montana. And she is a great ambassador and representative of so many of our faculty who have worked so hard throughout this pandemic to help our students succeed. And I think it's a really important discussion in light of the performance funding discussion that Christine mentioned, and I think President Cruzado made some very appropriate comments yesterday. It's been a very tough year, very tough couple of years during the pandemic. Very tough in particular for 2-year. You'll note on our performance funding, not a single 2-year institution in this system, under the metrics, hit 100% of their performance funding. Does that mean that people weren't working hard or not doing well? No. It's a very tough environment. Back to a former life in the business world, we always looked at incentive compensation, and you said, okay, how's this individual performing? They put up great numbers, but are they just riding an easy market? Or was it actually their performance, right? Similarly, in a down market, your top line nominal numbers might look bad, but man, if you're outperforming that market, you're doing pretty well. And I look to Missoula College, and you look at their retention rates are up 8%. Retention rate up 8% during a pandemic. Now, less students going in to 2-year because of some of the dynamics of the pandemic, so the number of degrees awarded lower. But for the students that are coming in, despite those challenges, up 8% in retention due to people like Lauren. And I think that's important context. And Commissioner Christian and Deputy Commissioner Trevor talked about it yesterday, but that's an important context of how to understand the performance funding, relative to the environment they're facing. So thank you for this presentation. It's inspiring and a great reminder for all of us of what truly differentiates the Montana University system, and that is our faculty and our staff who care so deeply for our students.
Thank you, President Bonner, and I appreciate that you talked about performance-based funding, so I didn't have to, so thank you. Are there any other questions from the Regents? Provost Markle, please.
Thank you, Chair Sexton, and thank the three of you. This is such an important conversation, and it doesn't impact just our 2-year campuses. Mm-hmm. And when we look at our 4 years, over 20% of our students come not ready for the college level first math course. So there's several things that are working together here that are helping us to improve retention and time to degree. And as the sort of one of the other underlying themes of this meeting is that there's many things. It takes many irons in the fire to continue to move that dial in retention and time to degree. When I think about this work, it's really 3-pronged, right? It's first making sure that the students are in the correct pathway. every student does not need to take college algebra. And that's, for someone in my background, that was a hard thing to digest. But it's so true. The data is so clear. In fact, Casey, I think we went to a Complete College America conference back in 2015, 16, and this was one of the themes. So we have the pathways, then we have the co-requisite. Lauren, you were very gracious when you said leaky pathway, but when 90% of the students that start don't graduate, that's a flood, that's a breach of the dam, right? And so when we came back, and Christine, you mentioned we took the guerrilla approach, we really did. We saw that this was significant. So we have the pathways, the co-requisite, and then the third piece is the assessment. How do we assess the correct course for students to start? And so all those things are working together. A couple of things behind the scenes that perhaps aren't as shiny are the work that was put in place by the board and the commissioner's office before we could start this, and that was a common course numbering. So as we sat down with all of the representatives from math departments in every institution, there was no blue and gold and maroon and gray. We all recognized that this is something we had to work together, not just across campuses, but within our own campus. Right? We had to break down that wall between the two-year, the embedded two-year, in our case, Gallatin College, and our math department. And that includes math education, that includes students in math education and graduate students in math working together to build this. But we couldn't have done it and we couldn't have implemented it so quickly if it wasn't for already having common course numbering and aligned learning outcomes in place. And so I think we have caught up with many of the states that were at the forefront of this, Tennessee, West Virginia, Mississippi, and a few others. And the results are really telling. It would be fantastic as we are able to assemble results from all of our campuses to show that in many cases, these students are progressing at an even better rate than the students who aren't entering into the co-requisite model. So fantastic work by you three. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Provost Makwa. Superintendent Arntzen had some comments.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Board Chair, Commissioners, our Commissioner and Board of Regents, just want to make the point, the K-12 system, we are opening up the accreditation. We started that same opportunity back in September of 20. What that means then is if a student graduates from a K-12 system, what does that look like in math? What does that look like in reading? And that's where the solutions need to be as well. They just can't be midstream. They have to be focused when they enter public school or enter education. So we need to look at this broader. The solution can't just be with a change here. It has to be understanding and recognizing the system of where they come from and what happened there. Honor what happened there, but also add solutions to there. So that's the partnership that I would also like to offer. And right now with that accreditation committee, looking to see what those graduation requirements are, it's not just 4 years of what. It's the accountability of what those 4 years did to make sure that we not track our students and our children, but we apply math appropriately, reading appropriately, so all of those groups of students are equally looked at. And I think that's where I can offer in, and it is good work. You've done great work, and I applaud your passion. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Chair Sexton, could I make one comment to that, Superintendent? I think you're so right, and I think that there's opportunity for partnership and really good dialogue. You know, the students that we're talking about here are the ones that make it to our campuses, right? There are plenty of students who do not enter or apply or enroll because, and Lauren mentioned this, because their own understanding of their efficacy as college students, and a lot of that has to do with how they perceive their math and writing abilities. So I think that there's a lot of opportunity to reach out to those students and think about partnerships that could encourage not just how are we understanding if students are ready, but help students know that yes, our college is ready for you.
Please, Superintendent Arntzen.
I apologize not to have a dialogue, but when it comes to the majority of the teachers that we license at the state level, and we have about 12,000 of those, majority of those are K-8. If that foundation isn't strong and the teachers are not confident in teaching anything in the protocol of math, the student is left. And if we need to uplift our teachers, and again, I'm coming back to what I first shared with, we need to empower those teachers to be confident, to be able to teach math. And if we can do that, then that confidence will be then given to that child, that family, for that pathway to post-secondary or onward to wherever they may be. We have a lot of work to do.
Thank you, Superintendent. And thank you very much for all of the really great questions and dialogue. Are there any additional comments or questions from anyone? Okay.
Yeah,
Joe-
no,
oh,
I have a
sorry.
quick,
Regent
just
Wilson,
a
yes.
comment. I haven't seen this on the portal, but we've talked about that 60% or the 40% that don't go on to any higher education. I would imagine that those students and their families don't realize that we have these pathways in place that will allow them to sort of get into and through those early, that first semester or two. So if we don't have that functionality right now in the portal, I think that's something that we might want to pursue.
Madam Chair, Regent Lozar, absolutely. I think that's a part of the plan. Thank you. Thanks,
Okay.
Christine.
Thank you very much, and I just want to add, I had to go through remedial math, and I can absolutely support Director Miller's comments about, I honestly did not enroll in college for a long time because I did not think I was going to be able to do it. So you're absolutely right, and you hit on it. You hit the nail right on the head, and I was mired in developmental math for a long time, so if I could have had this option, I would have been just thrilled. So anyway, happy that I got to be here as long as I was, but yeah, I can. This presentation speaks to my heart as well. I've been the student in that position, and it's a struggle, and thankfully I had a lot of support and a lot of great professors, but I feel for the students who don't have those things, and I think this is absolutely the right path. So with that, if we have anything, no? All right.
Thank you
The
very
business,
much.
the two-year committee is concluded, so back to you, Chair Lozar. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Regent Sexton, for agreeing to chair this committee and this committee in May as well. Certainly, you guys keyed in on a couple really, really important Regent priorities in PLA and developmental education, so appreciate your leadership there. Looking at the agenda, we hit the point in the meeting where we're going to seek additional public comment. I know we had public comment last night, but we will seek additional public comment now. So I'll call for any public comment on any matter not on the agenda, but under the jurisdiction of the Board of Regents. Written public comment can be sent into Jasmine Casanovas at jcasanovas@montana.edu. And to allow us to give everyone a chance to provide public comment, we ask you to limit your public comment to 3 minutes. So with that, is there any public comment this morning? Is there any public comment? All right, well, seeing no public comment, we can move on to taking action coming out of the committee reports and the committee action items. I am going to start with the Budget Admin and Audit Committee, and I am not going to read the full titles of each one of these, so if you want to follow along with the letters, that'll make it easier for me. So looking at the Budget Admin and Audit Committee, I will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
All right, moved by Regent Bao. Is there any discussion or corrections from members of the board? Is there any discussion or corrections from the campuses? Is there any public comment? Is there any public comment? All right, seeing no further comment, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Okay, motion passes. Moving on to the action item A under facility items, I will entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Moved by Regent Dombrowski. Is there any corrections or discussions from members of the board? Is there any discussion or corrections from the campuses? Is there any public comment? Seeing no comment, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Move on to action item B. I'll entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Moved by Regent Sexton. Is there any discussion or corrections from members of the board? Is there any discussion or corrections from the campuses? Is there any public comment? Seeing no comment, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Okay, I'll move on to action item C. I'll entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Moved by Regent Dombrowski. Is there any discussions or corrections from members of the board? Is there any discussion or corrections from the campuses? Is there any public comment? Seeing no comment, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Motion passes. All right, I will entertain a motion to approve action item E.
So moved.
Moved by Regent Sexton. Is there any discussion or corrections from members of the board? Is there any discussions or corrections from the campuses? Is there any public comment? Any public comment? Seeing no comment, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Motion passes.
Chair Lozar.
Did we miss D?
Yeah.
Yep. I will entertain a motion to approve action item D. Moved by Regent Buchanan. Is there any discussions or corrections from members of the board? Any discussion or corrections from the campuses? Is there any public comment? Any public comment? Seeing no comment, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. All right, motion passes. Moving on to the Academic Research and Student Affairs Committee. We've got 6 items in the action list here. I will entertain a motion to approve action item A.
So moved.
Moved by Regent Rogers. Is there any discussion or corrections from members of the board? Any discussion or corrections from the campuses? Is there any public comment? Any public comment? Seeing no comment, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Motion passes. I will entertain a motion to approve action item B. Moved by Regent Buchanan. Is there any discussion or corrections from members of the board? From the campuses? Is there any public comment? Seeing no comment, I will call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed, same sign. Motion passes. I will entertain a motion to approve action item C.
So moved.
Moved by Regent Sexton. Any discussion or corrections from members of the board? From the campuses? Is there any public comment? Any public comment? Seeing no comment, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Motion passes. I'll entertain a motion to approve action item D.
So moved.
Moved by Regent Rogers. Is there any discussion or corrections from members of the board? Is there any discussion or corrections from the campuses? Is there any public comment? Any public comment? Seeing no further comment, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Motion passes. I will entertain a motion to approve action item E. Moved by Regent Buchanan. Is there any discussion or corrections from members of the board? Is there any discussion or corrections from the campuses? Is there any public comment? Any public comment? All right, seeing no comment, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Move on to the last action item F. I'll entertain a motion to approve. Moved by Regent Bao. Is there any discussion or corrections from members of the board? From the campuses? Is there any public comment? Any public comment? Seeing no comment, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Motion passes. All right. Bear with me here. All right, the last item that we have before the board this morning is an appeal. You have each received the commissioner's decision and the written appeal with supporting documents submitted by the campus and the appellant. The issue before the board is whether to consider the appeal at a later meeting. Our appeal policy does not require us to accept an appeal if we're satisfied with the commissioner's review and decision. So the sole question is whether any regent believes the issues addressed in the commissioner's decision need further review by the board. So if you do not wish to hear the appeal at the board level, it is not necessary to make a motion. A lack of action on our part will signify our decision not to hear the case. The appeal is confidential. The board will not address the individual involved by name, identify the campus involved, or discuss the facts or specific issues. Is there any general questions as to this procedure before we consider the appeal? I will entertain a motion to hear the appeal. All right, there being no motion to hear this appeal, the request that we entertain the appeal is denied and the commissioner's decision is upheld. Well, Mr. Commissioner, board members, we've made it through the agenda for the March meeting. Again, I wanted to thank each and every one of you for traveling to Dillon. And thank you, Chancellor Reed, for hosting this meeting. We know how much work it takes for you and your team and your staff to put on this event. So I appreciate your leadership. Chancellor, I will turn it over to you to see if you have any last comments or remarks before we conclude the meeting.
Thank you, Chair Lozar. I guess I would just say it's been our privilege to host, and it's been wonderful to be able to have you all in Dillon, and I really appreciate it. I was just thinking it's kind of easy to host when you have good guests. So thank you for your attention here at Dillon. Also, I would just use this opportunity maybe just to publicly again thank all of those both at the University of Montana Western and the Commissioner's Office in helping put this event on. They do all the work. They've done a tremendous job, and I think it's been a great meeting. And again, thank you so much, and safe travels home.
All right, thank you, Chancellor Reed. The meeting's adjourned. Travel safe.